Welcome to BookWorthy, Elizabeth.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. Now, with the celebration of our country's birthday just a day away, I must ask a bit of a divisive question that sweeps our nation around this time of year. Will you be having hot dogs or hamburgers as you celebrate July 4th?
I will be eating hamburgers, but my kids, I'm sure, will all do hot dogs.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about kids and hot dogs, and there seems to be like how you know you're an adult is you don't really prefer hot dogs anymore.
Right. Unless you have to, and there's nothing else to eat.
Of course. There are those days.
Yeah.
What do you like to put on your hamburger, Elizabeth?
I am into the condiments, so I will do, ketchup, mustard, relish, and mayonnaise all on one
all
burger.
Of it.
Yeah. Bring it on.
Too fun. I have a kiddo that I live in Texas, so he likes to put salsa on his hamburger. And I'm like,
interesting.
Okay. He's a big condiment guy too, and so mayonnaise and salsa, and it just gets very interesting sometimes.
Yeah, keeps it moist.
That's right. Keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
All right, here's another food question for you.
Okay.
Do you put pineapple on pizza?
I don't if I make it at home, but I have no problem eating it. I will.
Okay.
I think it tastes good. So.
We went to one of those places that allows you to make your pizza.
Yeah.
And they cook it there, and then you go eat it. And my kids were like, "Ooh, pineapple!" And they're like, "All right, try it." Yeah. And they're kind of like, all the pineapple ended up on the plate.
Oh, right. Well, I'm impressed they even tried it because I'm not sure mine are to that point yet.
Yeah, I hear you. It's when they're being adventurous with food, I'm like, go for it.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is going to go.
Even if it ends up in the trash, at least you try it.
Exactly. Or what is it from Daniel Tiger? Got to try new things because they might taste good is something we say a lot around here.
Yes, that's very important parenting tip.
Very important. Thank you, Daniel Tiger.
Yeah.
Well, Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Well, we live in Ohio, and I have 3 kids. I have a daughter who's 10, who kind of was part of the inspiration behind me writing Pippa's book. And then she has 2 little brothers. I have twins who are 7 at home, and then my husband, and then we have a very large, rambunctious German Shepherd who gets into everything, who is inspiration for another book.
It's fun how those that influence our lives are definitely the inspiration behind our creative endeavors, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about your inspiration behind Pippa Potter.
So it started off, my daughter, I struggle with anxiety, and it did not take very long for us to find that my daughter was struggling with anxiety. So when she was about 7 is when we realized we needed to do something and help her. So we put her in therapy and just was really impressed with the tools she was learning and what her therapist was teaching her, what I was learning. You know, I went over 20 years without really knowing what anxiety was, like what I was feeling was anxiety. And more importantly, like that I could do something about it. Like that was revolutionary. And it just seems wild that's how it is, that we don't realize that we can do something when, researchers have found that it's very treatable. So I didn't want other kids to have to wait as long as I did, or, have to, right now there's like very few therapists. There aren't enough therapists for the population in general, but for kids especially. So, kind of giving them the tools that they can use on their own, whether or not they have professional help, because anxiety is, I think researchers think it's about, what is it? They think it affects 1 in 5 kids is the statistic, and diagnosed it's 1 in 8. So you can see from those numbers that there are a lot of kids who struggle with anxiety that aren't getting any kind of treatment. So I thought, why don't, I have this talent of writing. What if I took some of those tools she's learning and weave it into a story that kids would want to read, and then kind of just like plant those seeds in their mind that they can pull out of their pocket when they find that they're struggling or something's bothering them. So that was really the inspiration behind it. And I do not remember where the idea came from to make her the president's daughter. I wrote this book. maybe 3 years ago. And the first version was like not very exciting. So I kind of shelved it and I was like, I'll come back to this someday. And then last year I kind of like had committed to the Lord, like, I want to pick this back up and I want to, kind of give it to you as like my offering. And when I opened up the document, I saw that I had this like outline of like, she should be the president's daughter. And like, awesome. And I was like, whoa, this is a great idea. And I have no recollection of that idea coming to me. But so then I kind of ran with that. And my daughter, who, she's 10 now, that was actually the part she loved in the book, was all the little things about her being president's daughter. And I know we'll talk about this at some point, but like all the research I did about what it would actually be like to live in the White House. And she thought that was so cool, that there were maids who could actually clean up your room if your parents would let them.
Don't we all want one of those, right?
Right.
Too fun. And I've enjoyed watching your social media accounts with all the little fun facts that you've been putting out there about the White House and what it would be like to live in the White House. It reminded me of a 1996 movie called First Kid with Sinbad.
Yes. We watched that when I was like researching for this.
It was one of those like most eye-opening ideas, like what would it be like to be a kid in the White House? And so it was a fond movie when I was growing up. And
it had Sinbad, right?
It's got to be fun, right?
Yeah.
So I might have to have my kids watch that. We haven't watched it with them yet, but
it was cute.
We'll have to do that. But it's really neat to think of the history behind it. I guess, where did you go to find information about the White House, since it's such a special location?
Well, there is an awful lot of research out there if you like know where to dig. I got tons of books out of the library. Lots of YouTube. They'll do go behind the scenes in the White House, like CNN and stuff like that. There's a part where she takes her friend there's like a florist shop. Her friend is really into flowers. And on YouTube, there was like a news special that went into the florist shop. So like and you can go online and look up maps of the White House. So I could see like the floor plan, because in the basement, there's like, I think it's 99 or 100 rooms, with different things. So there's like a dentist office, a doctor's office, a chocolate shop, flower shop, bowling alley, all these things. And you can see the layout. But one of my favorite parts of researching it was I reached out. I really wanted to know which room would be Pippa's in the White House. And I did all this research and I could not figure it out. And so I reached out to the White House Historical Association and just kind of like, well, maybe, I don't know. And they actually wrote back and they gave me this whole long email of most presidents' kids have lived in the yellow bedroom. And so they sent me links to like pictures of when it was one of the Kennedy girls' bedrooms. And then you see like her little like toy horse she like rode on and her dolls. And so that was really helpful that they that way I knew, like, I'm not just picking a room, but to give it some of that historical accuracy. And, there have been a lot of kids that have lived there. So that was the most fun, that they actually wrote back and they told me, and they were super helpful.
That's awesome. It's one of those hard things as an author sometimes, just to put yourself out there and be like, tell me the things, please. And so it's really rewarding when they're like, here's all the stuff.
Right. When you really need it.
Yeah, most, historical societies are more than happy to be like, here's all the things we know. And it just really does create depth to your book, for sure, just to help kids see the presidency and see the White House itself through a kid's eyes, which is kind of fun.
It's really fun.
So cool. What do your kids think about this book?
Oh, they are my biggest cheerleaders. My daughter, so when we made these shirts, and she wears hers to school all the time. They have taken them to school. Like, they're so proud to give them as gifts. And to tell their class that their mom's an author, and that they're really proud of the illustrations. I think especially for my twins, it's funny, like they think the book is cool, but like the illustrations are where they are like really proud. So they've been great. And I wrote it originally, for my daughter. And, my boys now are kind of to the age she was when I first started writing it. And so I kind of didn't think that they would really care because they're boys and the protagonist is a girl. But I always read to them at night before bed. And we usually read, like little like mystery chapter books. And we had gone through them all. And one of my boys was like, well, why don't you read me your book? Why don't you read us your book? And so I did. And they were like, no, keep going. Like, I want to know. And then she collects like gems and crystals through the story. And so by the time we were done, they had like gotten out their crystals and they were like playing with them. And I was like, oh, this is so like heartwarming to me that even though they're, not a girl, that they can still embrace her story and latch on to some of those aspects in it so that was just very rewarding.
Well, I think Pippa is a great character that's very well-rounded, that you can connect on so many different levels, so that the boys can connect through rocks, because what boy doesn't like rocks?
Right.
And then girls can connect with the friendship element that you put in there, as well as, the struggle that Pippa has.
Yeah.
Now, you didn't say this earlier, but the illustrations, you did your own illustrations, didn't you?
I did.
Oh my goodness. Tell me about that process.
It was when I was growing up, like when I was in kindergarten to first grade, I wanted to be an artist when I grew up. Like I had like one coloring contest and stuff like that. And then in second grade, I started writing. That was when I learned to read and write, and I just flourished. And so I just dropped the art thing, like, and just ran with the writing. And I've always stayed involved in art. Like in high school, I did ceramics and loved it. And then like all my best friends were always very like artsy. And my first job out of college was writing for a graphic design magazine. And so I like judged design competitions and worked design conferences. But like had never kind of like embraced it like as my own. Like it was just like, I can appreciate art. And my like desire is with my writing is chapter books. Like I just love that age and genre, and it's very hard to get published in that. Like for whatever reason, chapter books are really difficult. And when I was reading them, I was like, these illustrations are very simple. They're not as intricate as you have in picture books. And I was like, I think I could do this. And it was an idea I kicked around for a couple of years where I was like, I think I can, but I don't know. So I just would pick it up off and on. And when it came to this, I was like, well, I'm going to try it and we'll see. And then with my boys being really, impressed and just, cheerleading. And then I sent it out to some agents, and they weren't necessarily interested in the chapter book, the fact that it was a chapter book, they really liked the illustrations. And they were like, well, if you have more like books that you've illustrated, let us know. And I was like, okay, I think I can do the illustrations. So
I'm sure that felt good to get a professional opinion to be like, you can do this.
Yeah. I'm just kind of like, all right, let's just jump and see.
Yeah, because that's one of the, was it pictures usually make a book, especially with, picture books as well as, an early chapter book like yours, and just to allow people to connect, or allow people and kids to connect a little bit more with the characters. And that must have been a very big undertaking for sure.
Yeah. But it was almost easier than the writing. I think it was something I could do before bed, and just like I just draw and kind of get in the zone, and you just kind of fine tune. Whereas I feel like when I'm writing, like I have to be like really laser focused, and there's all these elements to balance. So I'm actually looking forward to continuing to kind of like hone the illustration and just kind of see where it leads.
It's fun. I mean, I like to draw also, and it's one of those, there's like a freedom and a playfulness in drawing that is not as, I guess, constrained as writing can be. Where there is a lot of creativity in writing, there is a lot of rules and a lot of formulas, but with, drawing and painting, you can be a little bit more like, okay, I'm just playing with this character.
And you don't really have to like engage your brain a ton. Like you just like let your like hand and eyes do the work, and your brain can kind of just chill out.
Yes. I think that's why adult coloring books are so big, is that there is just that ability to calm ourselves, work with our anxieties, and just to step back when you're in that art zone.
Yes.
Too neat. Now, you mentioned that you kind of struggle with anxiety, and you saw your daughter struggling with anxiety as the inspiration for this book. What, in this process of writing Pippa Potter's story, did you, I guess, take into your own anxiety struggle?
I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to integrate into the story was the idea that just becoming aware of your emotions. And because that was something that I hadn't really ever, or it had taken me a long time to kind of realize, to pay attention. So throughout the story, there's kind of this theme of how you're feeling, or how you're feeling matters. Pay attention to your body. What is your body telling you? Because how you're feeling matters, and we can do something about that. So I think just in the process of writing it, it kind of just helped me it really like was the like hammer on the nail of just remembering that. And, there are times, I still get anxious about things, and kind of, it makes it easier for me to remember those tools, like there's a lot about deep breathing and, like positive, like affirmations or mantras, just to kind of ground yourself and remind yourself that, like our anxiety is telling us that we're supposed to be afraid of something, but it's not really something we have to be afraid of. Like, it's not a true danger, and to remind ourselves and calm ourselves down. But I think even like now that the story is written, I think it's definitely been a push, even just being on this interview, like I love being behind the computer and like faceless and all that. So I can see how the Lord has used it to kind of challenge me to speak up and to kind of embrace who I am and how He's made me. And so I hope that, like, I wrote this book from a place of like, I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to be the one who doesn't want to raise your hand in class, and, to not want to speak up about how you're feeling and to remain quiet, but that when that you can do it, and that it's powerful to be able to like speak up and share your words and everything. So
yeah, I think, what is it? Growing up, for me, I guess I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and so it's kind of like emotions were just not something we talked about.
Oh, right.
It was kind of just like, go deal with it and buck up. Yeah. And so it is interesting to see, us as adults to be like, you know what? We can speak into ourselves and speak, life into ourselves, and positive affirmations, like you said, as well as, into our kids too. And to take the time to recognize our emotions. I think with my own anxiety struggle, I think one of the things that I think you just mentioned was just kind of like, I have to remind myself, is this a fight or flight situation?
Yes.
Like,
yeah, right.
No. I'm, why am I afraid? Why am I wanting to run? And just recognizing those things and taking the time to walk back through things, very basic, but, giving kids those tools, as we've kind of seen anxiety skyrocket in the last, 3-4 years, is, so important, not just for us as parents to have the tools to communicate with our kids on their level, what they're experiencing, but also for kids to come to a place of like, oh, like you said, emotions matter. And, our emotions are given to us for a reason, to communicate something going on inside, or a dislike for something that's happening around you. And so I love that you're equipping kids to do that. Now, when did your writing journey begin, Elizabeth?
I mean, back in second grade, is when I had such a kind teacher who I think she really loved writing. She would give us books. And I think maybe you got points for books, or like we got like pizza coupons. I don't know. There was some incentive, but I know that I cranked them out like all the time, probably more than she like wanted or thought. But she also just really encouraged me and was like, saw that and spoke life into that in a way that like I held on to. And I had a lot of teachers who saw that and, encouraged me. And then so when I was in high school, kind of I'd always like I knew writing was my thing, but didn't know where that was going to go. I didn't really have a plan. And then I signed up for the high school newspaper. Well, it wasn't a newspaper; it was a magazine. Our high school had a magazine, and I just loved it. We went and we did a restaurant review, like locally. Me and the like teacher who was in charge and another student, and I was like, I love this. I could do this, for the rest of my life. So so I went to school and I studied magazine journalism, and I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And in that time, I became a believer and really grew in my faith. And at that point, I was like, oh, you know what? I could take this talent the Lord's given me and use it like for Him. So I went and I worked for a Christian publisher for a few years after that as a publicist working on like their books. So that was a lot of fun because I got paid to read things about the Lord, and it was just really a great opportunity.
So fun. Now, I love how you talk about teachers encouraging and kind of just helping to see that and breathe life into that gifting. I think there's always that teacher I have my teacher that did that. And It's been neat in these different interviews to find that most people have had either a second grade teacher or a fourth grade teacher that have just been like, you can do this. And that's launched people in so many different directions. I love the power that teachers have to encourage kids. And so that's super fun. And what is your favorite book?
My favorite book. Well, that's a really hard question because I read in lots of things. I think maybe my favorite book, fiction book, well, it's also hard, but I really like All Time Christie by Catherine Marshall. That's the book where her mom, it's written on about her mom. She goes to Appalachia, and but there's also the Christian faith message woven in. So that's been my favorite since 8th grade. But maybe even more so now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Sensible Shoes series. I'm blanking on the lady's name, but it's a Christian series, and it incorporates a lot of spiritual disciplines and into the story of just how the Lord heals these women through prayer and through the scripture, how He speaks to them. I think it's something that for a lot of Christians, we don't necessarily realize what it means for the Lord to speak to us and to listen to His whispers in our heart. And I think she does a fabulous job of bringing those to life. And I've tried writing Christian fiction. It's hard. So I kudos to these women who are able to do that and marry those two things of really good storytelling, but then weaving the faith in a way that's not didactic or preachy. Yes, but life-giving. It makes you want to go I want to go pray. I want to go spend time with the Lord. So I think those would be my hands down because I just think they're very powerful.
I think, those definitely are some powerful books. So Sensible Shoes, I'm going to have to check that one out. That sounds interesting.
It's really good.
Now, what can we expect next from you, Elizabeth?
Well, I am working on book 2 in the Pippa Potter series. So I wanted to address anger because I think that's something we don't really talk. I mean, we talk to kids about it. We tell them you don't don't hit when you're angry, all that stuff. But kind of, what do you do when you're angry then? So kind of bringing this to the forefront and equipping kids to have a healthy understanding of anger and their anger, and not to shame themselves or, feel ashamed. So, but I also, I would really love to cover perfectionism, and I have an idea for a Christmas edition, a Christmas story featuring the White House because, it's incredible come Christmas. They do so much stuff there. So I have a ton of ideas and probably not enough time to write them all or illustrate them all, but slowly.
Well, I love that you're taking, things that you're seeing in your own kids and the kids around you and seeing their struggles and being willing to step in and to approach them on their level. I think anger is definitely one of those qualities we all struggle with from time to time.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, teaching kids about anger is a hard thing because what is it? I think I read recently that anger is like a red flag for a hurt or emotion inside. And it's like, it's not wrong to be angry. I mean, Jesus was angry, but it's what we do with that anger. That is the next step. So I love that you're going to tackle such an important and good topic there.
Thank you.
Well, where can people find out more about you and your books, Elizabeth?
Absolutely. Well, I have my website. It's elizabethjameswrites.com. And then I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as Elizabeth James Writes. So I would love to have people join me there and find out all those little factoids like you mentioned.
Those have been lots of fun to watch, and just the neat pictures you've put together, of the White House and the families that have been there. So I really enjoyed it because I'm a bit of a history buff too. But thank you for being with us today, Elizabeth.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you for joining Elizabeth and me on this episode of the BookWorthy podcast. Check the show notes for any books or links that we discussed, and let us know in the comments if you prefer hamburgers or hot dogs. Be sure to like and subscribe to discover more great books together. Happy reading.